Now is the time to take care of your customers.
Welcome to the Company Growth Podcast.
The Company Growth Podcast.
I'm your host, Alicia Domenico. Tangible Words is a growth agency of which I'm the CEO and co-founder. And I want to design the Company Growth Podcast so that you, as a listener, would have the benefit of learning from other growth experts and other allies and interesting people who have a lot to share about what it means to be a company and to go through growing pains and come through stronger on the other side. Today on the show, I invited Todd Hockenberry.
My name's Todd Hockenberry. I'm the owner of Top Line Results. We're a consulting firm that works with B2B companies and help them understand how to grow and connect with the modern buyer. And we help companies figure out the roadblocks, the issues, and the opportunities they have, and then help them execute that. I'm excited to be on the show today.
And Todd, you also run your own podcast.
I do. It's called The Manufacturing Show, and I co-host it with some other folks in this space. And I focus on growth and how companies can grow their business, and I deal with everything relating to sales, marketing, leadership, you name it.
I thought Todd would make a great guest to talk about what your company can do in a time of uncertainty to really continue to grow and not shrink. I hope today you get the benefit of two growth strategists' perspective when we're looking at something like the coronavirus and how it's going to affect the economy and how manufacturers are such a big part of that story. I'm going to do a follow-up blog post on the tangiblewords.com website under Company Growth Podcasts to go deeper on some of these topics. You can read it after you listen. Go to tangiblewords.com/blog and look for the Company Growth category. I think that manufacturers are going to be hit the hardest by COVID-19 and all of the production capacity problems, from people stocking up to trying to still supply to not having their staff come into work. You know, someone just said to me that more people will go bankrupt than die from coronavirus.
I can believe that. I have a little different perspective, though, living here in Orlando. The tourism industry, travel, events, there's been 7 huge conferences canceled. There was a medical conference this week that had 50,000 people attending, canceled. I think the consumer part of our economy is something like 70% here in the U.S., so that's taken a huge hit in the short term. It'll bounce back, but it's going to be a really severe hit short term. Manufacturing, I was speaking with one of my clients this morning. They're in the kind of building construction components and materials business, and there's a lot of building out there going on right now, and there's a ton of established work. So I think there's momentum that happens in manufacturing that will continue, and I think their biggest risk in the short term is that if they get it gets into a factory and you get a bunch of people, they lose their workforce for 2 weeks or longer. That is, to me, a pretty big risk, but it's a big unknown right now. It's a really big unknown, and again, I don't certainly pretend to be an expert on this stuff, but it seems to me that we're a little irrationally upset about it. Not that we shouldn't be concerned, but this is it's certainly something we're going to be fine with. And I think most of us, if we have clients like me doing consulting and advising, they're asking me for my advice, and my advice is advice that's always good advice, I believe, and it's kind of the core of my book, Inbound Organization. And now is the time to take care of your customers at a very high level. And what I mean by that is never assume that you're doing a good job, right? They're just like you. They're struggling, they're concerned, they're worried. What can you do on top of what you're already doing for your clients to assure them or reassure them, or to have contingency plans, or to adjust and do virtual meetings, or share more content or more information, or help them get closer to their customers? That's what I'm trying to do. And I think this is an opportunity for people to strengthen relationships and show why they are our customers in the first place. And the companies that do that will build stronger relationships and have a good future, I think, with those clients. Again, it's one of my mantras is selling is helping. And that's been true for a long time, and it's going to become even more true. And now's the time as a salesperson. Don't think about selling so much as helping your clients and what you can do to help them through their situation.
That's such a wise thing to say. I mean, if we look back at what we learned in the 2008 crisis, so many financial companies back then would wish 2 years later that they had communicated through that time to say, don't pull investments. It's a long play. Just hang on. And in this coronavirus, I think what we're saying is everybody, if we just hang on, it will be okay. But the panic, I always feel like when stock markets drop and everything, it's always because it's always so emotional. It's such an emotional decision, right? That drives a lot of those decisions to pull money away from something. And I feel like that panic, that pulling away, we're learning with the coronavirus doesn't just happen in the stock market or with your financial planner. It actually could happen in any relationship. And whether you're an agency or any company and all, it's a really good time to be connecting with your customers and to be wrapping your arms around and saying, we're going to be okay. And we're going to keep doing all the things that we always do. And, basically, I think what I was going to say is if the world just shuts down and stops moving so much for 30 days, basically everybody would be healthy again, right? And maybe that by that time, the 9 days that it can live on the surface or whatever would have gone away. And we would at least have very, very minor cases and we'd know how to respond. So the worst case scenario here is that we just have to shut down the world of movement for 30 days and work virtually. Which brings me to my next point, which I thought was interesting and you might have an opinion on, about being a company like a marketing agency. We've adopted this virtual and been a pioneer of working from home. And a lot of companies in the past that I've met, we can't do business together because that's just not the way that they work. They're so face-to-face. And I think this is a very interesting workforce use case in that everybody's going to have to be a little more comfortable than they've ever been and much more prepared with a virtual world over the next 30 days.
Well, here in Florida, all the public universities have sent everybody home, and they're going to finish the semester more than likely virtually. My daughter goes to a private school here in Florida. They haven't done that yet, but they're going to. My son's high school is probably going to go that direction. So this is a really interesting trend. I'm going to tie these two together. We are becoming more and more used to online learning or digital learning in many ways. What we're creating here today is going to be audio, digital learning or content for people. Hopefully they get value from it, right? So how can you as a business create with your customers or for your customers online digital podcast, audio, video learning to help them solve their problems, right? This is a big trend. Be that help for them in that. Use the tools. Don't crawl up in a ball and go away. Be aggressive and promote it, and don't wait for them to call you. Have a plan. Get out in front of them. I'm calling my customers all day today, yesterday. I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to be in front of them and saying, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm seeing. Because the first thing they ask me is, okay, what should we do to think about how we can grow, right? The smart people are asking me the growth question right now. What can we do now in a time of uncertainty to be positioned for being able to help more people? And it's a great question. If you are aggressive and proactive and think about how you can help the other person, help that customer, and help you how you really deliver them value, not your product or your service, but how you really deliver them value, you'll be positioned for future opportunities. And again, I'll go back. I'll double down on taking care of your clients right now. This is the time to not the time to lose anybody. It's a time to build and deepen. Because we know this as human beings, right? You go through some trauma, a difficult time, you go through some stress, it builds relationships. And we have an opportunity to do that. And I think the tools are available. As long as the internet's still functioning, I don't think we're going into a Walking Dead scenario here where society breaks down. So we're going to have the tools available to us to keep connected and communicate and share and help. And smart companies are going to be the ones that do that.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think that's really good. In terms of taking advantage of that growth in a time of uncertainty, I love that. That's so forward thinking, and not a lot of people think that way. So how do you foster people to relax a little bit and say, look, this is a time of uncertainty, but there's still the opportunity to grow?
Yeah, I think leaders need to really think about their employees and their team and think about their specific needs. This is going to be, working remotely sounds great. I've done it for 11 years. I love it. But I also work with my wife. We share an office. So I have a lot of social interaction with her. I'm connected to a lot of people in my community. So, and I'm still an old school person. I get on the plane and go see my clients, right? I spend time face to face with them. So there's going to be personal issues or concerns, and we need to be conscientious that's going to impact people differently. And so number one, I would say leadership really has to support their team, and it's an opportunity for leaders to strengthen and improve their culture of caring for their employees first. So it was an interesting quote in our book. One of the questions we asked, we interviewed 100 people or 120 people for our book, and I asked them all this question. I said, who do you put first, customers or employees? And you'll hear like Richard Branson, there's quotes that say you put your employees first and take care of customers, and other people say your customers come first. And there was a gentleman gave us an answer that was my favorite answer. He said, who do you love, your mother or your wife? And I love that because that's exactly right. You don't have a business without customers, and you don't have customers without employees. They're equally valuable. So when you're thinking about taking care of your customers, you need to be thinking about taking care of your employees so they can take care of your customers. So a nice virtual circle. And leaders that focus on their employees' needs and being flexible and being generous in a time of really significant uncertainty for a lot of people will build loyalty and build hopefully retention and build a culture that shows that they really care. So I think there's a really big opportunity for leaders here to really focus on employees. And then once you do that, then you can say, okay, you have to think about it. You have to put yourself in your customer's shoes. Where are they at? Where are they weak? Where can we help them solve whatever problems they're facing, and be proactive about it. And don't assume that just because you haven't talked to them in a while or they haven't bought from you in a while doesn't mean they wouldn't want to hear from you. It's a very interesting bias I see a lot. People assume that customers don't want to hear from them. They're very reactive. A lot of companies react and wait to hear from them, and that's the wrong way to look at it. You should always be proactive in being in front of your customers. And if you can start now, there's some impetus to do that. That can build good habits and a culture of being proactive and staying in front of your customers. So everybody's different. I know what I'm trying to do is teaching a lot of sales lessons, of really getting into the kind of nuts and bolts of sales and making sure salespeople are not just order takers and not just waiting for the phone to ring, but they are learning and practicing being helpful, sharing, understanding what kind of value they really bring and what the kind of value their customers want, and then being aggressive and proactive in providing it.
I love that. And the book that you referred to is the one that, of course, you co-wrote with Dan Tyre from HubSpot, correct?
One of my favorite people in the entire world, Dan Tyre.
One of mine too, and we're going to have him on this season as well, and just to hear his energy. But one of the things that you said there is about how to be helpful in doing training with salespeople right now. And then, of course, we've been talking about leaning into your customers and at a time of uncertainty. I'm not going to call it a crisis, but a time of uncertainty, leaning in and hugging your customers virtually, hug them virtually. Is very important with the coronavirus. But that idea of being able to reach out to them right now and bring them in and be helpful and be a good listener, hear what they're going through, is very much what Dan Tyre would teach about being a good salesperson in 2020. It's very much about being helpful, being a human, always, always first.
Well, you touched on a thing that I've been training a lot of sales teams on recently, and it's such a basic thing, but it's active listening. And really just understanding how to ask a question and then just be quiet and listen with the intent to understand. Be there for them and let them talk, using silence to your advantage. It's such a powerful thing. I did a training 2 weeks ago up in Washington, D.C., and about 50 salespeople in a room. And we were talking about this, and I just stopped. Like, I finished a sentence and I just stopped talking, and I counted to 4, which is the magic number for a pause. And at the 4-second mark, one of the managers actually started talking, asked me a question. And it's like, it's a human being thing, right? If you just shut up for 4 seconds, there's a really good chance the other person's going to say something. and it was funny. It was funny that it happened in a room full of people, and it was a place where you normally would just be, you wouldn't do that, right? I was in the middle of a training, right? So it's something to be thinking about, to be practicing, and to prepare for, right? Think about your conversations you have with your. My wife is my trainer on this one. I always check myself if I'm really listening. Did I hear what you just said, or am I just taking it for granted? We've been married a long time, so you kind of know each other's thoughts. But am I really listening with the intent to understand, or am I listening with the intent to answer? Right? Am I formulating that answer in my head, or am I thinking about the next thing I'm going to say? And that annoys all of us. Doesn't matter who you are, and especially if you're dealing with virtual, video, phone, you really have to avoid that, because you don't want to have that interruption. You want to let the person talk and get it out. Let them share with you where they're at, and be prepared. Have your questions ready. Have your, if you want to say something, that you want to offer something, be ready. But salespeople have to do a much better job of listening and understanding how to ask questions from the other person's perspective. So that's a big one.
I totally agree with you. And as someone who trains a lot of salespeople, we both do. Tell me about this. I always feel like we're at this level of understanding. If you're in a sales role, most people think that they know how to do it already. And it's like, hurry up and just get out of my way so I can go do it. There's a great resistance to training, and maybe that's because we're coming out of an industry that has had training after training after training. The 90s, it was consultative selling, I think. There's just been body of thought after body of thought, and a lot of people who've been in the industry a long period of time are like, oh, this is just the next big thing. But this always be human thing that us HubSpotters really believe in, under the Lion Group, under Dan Tyre, we really believe in the human-to-human connections. I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think that's a trend.
It is not. It is not a trend. It is the way the world is going to interact in the future. The younger generations, as they come up, they are only going to deal with brands and companies and salespeople that treat them like a human being. We see this right now in a lot of different changes in things like inbound marketing and marketing tactics, and I want to get to that, but I want to get to the sales training topics real quick, because I think it's important. The key topics I've been working on lately are all human-centered topics. Negotiation, active listening, your mindset as a salesperson so that you can position yourself to help and be a resource, how you create value over the course of the sales process, how you, deal with when you close a sale, what do you do there to be more human so that you make sure that it extends beyond just getting the contract, but it extends into making sure your customer is successful with whatever you sold them. And this extends to really basic things too, where the same group I was talking about a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how you start a conversation. It seemed like the most basic thing, right? And this was a room full of 50 people, and they thought they knew how to start a conversation. And they were more in a BDR sales development role, where their job was to make initial contact with prospects and leads, and then qualify them to a certain level, and then bring in a senior account person for more in-depth presentations or proposals.
Sure, that's the Aaron Ross predictable revenue model, 100%.
Exactly. I have some issues with that, but that's another story. So I said, okay, great. So tell me how your normal first conversation goes. And they were like, well, we talk about this. We ask these questions. I said, no. I said, how do you answer the phone? I said, you call them in the phone. They pick up the phone and they say, hello. What do you say? And they said, well, we say, hello, Mr. Smith. How are you today? I said, okay, let's role play this. I'm your prospect. You call me and do that. And they said, okay. They said, ring, ring, ring. I said, hello. And they said, is this Mr. Hockenberry? And I said, what's the name on your call sheet? And they just looked at me. And then they said, well, how are you today? I said, well, you don't really care. And I said, nobody's saying that to you. I say that to people when they call me and do that, because I want to hear their reaction, because it's like field test. But that's the reality. We don't care. You start off your first phone call annoying them.
Yes.
That's not human. It's not at all. You know their name. You've gotten their name for whatever reason. Be human and respect their time. and say, hello, Mr. Hockenberry, I'm Todd from XYZ company, and we have this solution that delivers huge amounts of value to your companies like yours. Do you have 2 minutes for a quick call? Just say it.
Yep.
Don't waste my time. Show me a little respect. That's being human, but that's also preparing. And that's a little thing, but sales, I've never had a phone call. Nobody has ever cold called me and said that to me ever. So I know people weren't training this.
Yep, it's just subconscious. It's a hello, how are you? And it's like, that's not when we're actually really wanting to know how someone is. That's not how we do it. That's a standard token, how are you? Don't really care. And I don't know if you know this, but I invented the term the Millennial cookie dunk. Do you know what the Millennial cookie dunk is?
I can't wait to find out.
So the Millennial cookie dunk is what I started to doing when I was a young punk and we used to have landlines, and they'd always call it supper time. I was born in 1981, so I do get to say that I'm a millennial, one of the first, the old one. However, people would call it supper time, be like, hello, Mrs. Dominico, how are you today? And I'd say terrible and hang up the phone. So that is the cookie dunk. It doesn't matter. You don't answer them. You hang up the phone right away because you identify that it's not a friend. It's not someone who actually cares about you, and you don't need to spend time on them. So
That's exactly right.
So I love that you're saying respect their time and be a human. And I love the starting with, hey, Frank, did I catch you at a bad time? Before you even introduce yourself, because I think that's also respecting their time, that they don't need to care about who you are yet until they realize that first you respect their time. And they may say, yes, you did, and hang up and cookie dunk you anyway.
But the bottom line is they answered their phone. I'm going to push back on you and listen to this one. They answered their phone. So
yes.
They are telling you, they don't know you, right? It's not going to caller ID you or your company. They answered it. So
yep, they have time. They answered it.
I would give them the 5-second pitch, and most companies, they won't spend the time to figure out how to boil their value proposition down to 5 seconds. And some of them don't even know it. If you gave, they couldn't do it because they don't think about it, right? Oh, we sell this product, just go pitch this, make it a numbers game, right?
Yep.
I don't want to do a numbers game. I'm only going to call those people that I know are good prospects. I'm not going to just call everybody in the phone book or some stupid list. I'm going to have I'm going to know who my ideal audience is. I'm going to know what their issues are, what their pain is, how we can help them, and I'm going to give them 5-7 seconds and say, here's what we do. Do you want to talk about that? That's showing them respect. Ask your mother how you are. That's fine.
Yep.
But don't ask a cold call prospect who knows it's a pile of garbage.
Yeah, and I love, that's a great benchmark. There you go, everybody listening. Boil down what you can do in 5 seconds when you call, and then say, do you want to hear more about that? Because they might be that they don't want to at that point in time, but they might also be the wrong person. Hopefully you've done your research and that doesn't happen, but they may realize internally that's shifting and give you some good insight there too.
Well, let's tie the 5 to 7 second boil down your value into a couple other things. One is, if I go on your website, does it take me that long to figure out what you do? If it takes me longer than that, I'm not scrolling, I'm not clicking any links, right? So number one, you better have it there. Number two, you should have a mission that's clear, that is concise, that it talks about your audience and the value you bring. So it should be tied to your mission. Or you have one of those stupid missions that's up on the wall in the office and it's behind a frame somewhere that nobody knows. I'll tell you, I got a lot of stories for you, Lisa. I did a training with about 100 people. This is a international brand that your audience would all know. I'm under an NDA. I can't say who it was, but we were in a training session, and they were all there. The CEO, all the senior leaders were there, and I asked them. I said, "Okay, who in here knows their company's mission?" And they all looked at me, and they looked at each other, and the only person in the room that put their hand up was the CEO, and it was because he wrote it. And I ran the risk of embarrassing him, but he understood why I did it, and it was because you don't have one that's relevant. Mm-hmm. You have something on paper, but that doesn't mean it's relevant. So to me, all these things are tied together for businesses to really understand what they do, who they do it for, how they help, how they bring value. Think that through. Show your audience the respect they deserve, that you've thought it through, and you're not just saying, I'm going to pitch it to everybody in the world and hope I land a few. Show your show your employees the respect they deserve, to create a mission, to give them something to point at and look at, to guide their work every day, and not just come to work and have a 9-to-5 job. Give them a mission, right? These things all tie together in my mind.
That's the backbone of Bernie Harnesh's book, Scaling Up. He really talks about how important it is to have that mission, but I want to clarify on what you mean. We used to do mission. Mission used to be all over people's first incantation of their website in late 90s. And as a copywriter coming in the 2000s, I was like, why is everybody putting their mission on their website and saying, headline of the webpage, mission? blah, paragraph, headline to the next, values, bullet point list, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's so unengaging. But it's not that mission and values are going out of the window. We're not saying that's a bad thing to have. We're saying it should drive you, but it should drive the three things that you try to do in every customer interaction at all points. And it should be so clear that that is the problem that you are trying to solve with your mission, that everybody in your company works for you and all of your customers can see it palpably, that it is the thing that you're doing.
Absolutely. You nailed it.
Cool. I love that. I think you've said some really interesting things for everybody to chew on. And in a time of uncertainty and a time of the virtual world coming into I feel like the virtual world is getting up there and flexing its muscles and saying, look at us, guys. Like, we got this. Don't worry about the coronavirus. We know how to shine in this moment. But I think you've also given some real tips for how a company can focus on its growth in a time of uncertainty or at any time in general.
Well, I hope so.
So that was Todd Hockenberry from Top Line Results, another growth agency just like Tangible Words, although they focus more on the strategy and advice to the leadership of other companies. And if anything we said today to you sounds like we're not very empathetic towards the coronavirus, I assure you that that's not the case. It's more that we're looking now at the economic impact of the coronavirus and trying to tease out some takeaways to help companies stabilize in this time of uncertainty. Particularly the manufacturers who could be hit the hardest as they try to meet production demand of consumers and get stuff out the door with limited staff who are available. And I hope that you are able to take some of these ideas to your company in order to refocus and get through the next 30 days. You can share the ideas in this recording via this podcast or by going to tangiblewords.com/blog and looking up Company Growth Podcast on the episode on staying strong at a time of uncertainty.